given in the figure to show that the given statement is true and to explain. So here in this picture we've got a couple of given information, only 2 pieces, so we need to find more than that because it takes at least 3 pieces of information to prove triangles congruent. So we're looking and we notice hopefully that they're touching, that this is that bow tie picture, and that we're going to have vertical angles going on. So here at P we've got some vertical angles. Now I look again and I make sure corresponding things are marked, and I make sure that, it looks like one of the theorems. I've got 2 angles in the side and the middle here. I've got 2 angles in the side and the middle here. So I can get the triangles to be congruent by angle, side, angle. But of course first I have to list what I added to the picture. So what I added to the picture was that angle MPN is congruent to angle RPQ because vertical angles are congruent. And so that was what I added. Now I do have enough to say the triangles are congruent. I'm going to say triangle MPN. So that was 1 mark, 2 mark, no marks, congruent to triangle RPQ, which is 1 mark, 2 mark, no marks. So going in corresponding order. And the reason is angle, side, angle. There we go. For a reason. And then we're able to say that angle N is congruent to angle Q by CPCTC. Corresponding parts congruent, triangles are congruent. Let's look at number 10. On number 10 here, I've got a side marked in each triangle, and I've got 2 angles marked in this other triangle here. They share a side here. One thing that's kind of cool is that the shared side, being an isosceles triangle here, this has 1 mark, this could also have 1 mark. And then I know that these triangles are going to be congruent, but I don't know if they're going to be congruent to these angles. So I can't know if these triangles are going to be congruent or not. So there's not enough information here. There's like too much going on in one triangle and not enough going on in the other triangle for us to be able to tell that they're congruent. So that one's not enough information. On number 11, we've got 2 angles marked in each triangle, and then these triangles are touching. They share a side, so let's mark the shared side with 1 marking because there was no sides marked originally. And let's write down why we're marking that. HF congruent to HF by the reflexive property. And now let's look at our pictures. 1 mark, 2 mark, and then this segment. 1 mark, 2 mark, and then this side here. So they're correspondingly marked, and each of them has 2 angles and a side, and the side is not between the angles. So this is going to be angle, angle, side for the reason that the triangles are congruent. So I'm going to name them based on the angles. I'm going to go around as like 1 mark, 2 mark, no mark. So that's the order I'm going to go, which is EFH on the left side. And on the right side, 1 mark, 2 mark, no marks makes me go GHF. So that really looking at those angle markings and using those to put the order helps me so much. And my reason is going to be angle, angle, side. And now the triangles are congruent, and now we're able to say that FG is congruent to HE by CPCTC. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent for the reason there. Let's look at these last 3 of this type. We've got overlapping triangles going on here. In this triangle, notice that NG is marked the same as HT, and they kind of overlap this GH part. I'm going to mark that with 2 markings there. If I was doing a proof of this one, and I'm going to sort of abbreviate my reasoning here, you would have to use segment addition to say that NH is congruent to segment GT, and it would probably take 2 or 3 steps in the proof. So we're just going to go with marking this, and then I'm going to be like just marking here NH and GT, just to show you that those are congruent sides. Then we've also got two angles here in the picture. So my reason why the triangles are congruent, I'm just going to skip to the triangles congruent on this one, would be triangle KNH. So I went 1 mark, right angle, no mark. So then I'm going to go over to this other triangle and I'm going to go 1 mark, right angle, no mark, so MTG. G. And my reason for that, I've got two angles on the side that's not between the angles, so angle, angle, and the side not in the middle. So this would show the triangle's congruent. And then we would be able to say angle KHN congruent to angle MGT by CPCTC. So I didn't really explain all the reasons, but I explained why the triangles are congruent, what's that reason, and why those angles are congruent. This one. What we would have to do in this one, if we're looking to say that side BD is congruent to BE, we could actually get there just looking at this picture. We wouldn't even need congruent triangles. That's going to be sort of the silly part of this. I've got the angle at E and the angle at D marked congruent to each other, so this triangle is an isosceles triangle, and by the converse of the base angles theorem, we could say that BD is congruent to BE. So I'm just going to skip right to that and say BD congruent to BE by the converse of the base angles theorem. Remember that the base angles theorem says if two sides of an isosceles triangle are congruent, then the angles opposite them are congruent, and the converse of that says if the base angles are congruent, then the sides are congruent. So that's what we're using here. We don't even need congruent triangles to get there. Looking at number 6, if I want to say that BC is congruent to AT, then I need to show these triangles congruent to each other. And to get there, I'm looking at them, they've got 3 things marked in them right now. They each have 2 angles and the side that's not in the middle. And they appear to be correspondingly marked. The side that's marked right next to the 2 markings in both of them. So I'm just going to start by naming the triangles that are congruent. I'm going to say ABC in that one, which is no marking, 2 markings, 1 marking, congruent to triangle. Now I need to find the one with no markings in this triangle, and they're overlapping, so I know it's weird. S is the one with no markings. So I went from A to B. B had 2, so I need to go from S to T. And then to A, because A for that triangle had 1 marking. Strange, I know, you'll have to get used to naming them. And then they've got 2 angles in the side that's not in the middle, so the reason is angle, angle, and then the side's not in the middle, so that goes on the end for the reason. And then you're able to say that BC is congruent to AT by CPCTC.